one of these fucking guys grabs me by my dick and my throat, lifts me over his head, and throws me across the parking lot. And I hit the fucking Boston's. They have like a big Ryder truck. I hit the Ryder truck and fall down. And I'm like, oh God, what the fuck?
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, I want to give a giant shout out to my good friend Andrea, who just got married last weekend and doesn't like making a big deal out of things. So I decided to give you a shout out in the beginning of the podcast because you like to listen to this, and I know that you'll probably hear this. I wish you and Michael the bestest of times with each other for the rest of your beautiful lives. The Gadjits were an American ska and rock and roll band from Kansas City, Missouri. Formed by the brothers Brandon, Zach, and Adam Phillips, they were signed as young bucks to Hellcat Records in '97. They released 3 albums on that label before heading to Thick Records, and then RCA, where they were dropped when Clive Davis took over. From there, they went on to create more bands such as The Architects, Brandon Phillips and The Condition, and Other Americans. My old band Lanemeyer played a few gigs with these kids on the road back in the day, and I was beyond stoked to get them on the podcast to chat about life. The following is what we chat about. Constantly being in bands with each other, playing with Rancid as teenagers, how are they treated as being a young band, the Wicks, Hellcat Records, changing over to The Architects, the Gallows, the fucking crazy Boston's show brawl story, drug use, the Canadian booking agent story, and a ton more. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so by joining my Patreon for $1 a month. It's over at patreon.com/thiswasthescene, or you can go to thiswasthescene.com and scroll down, and there's a Patreon button there that you can click on. If you do $1 per month per year, it basically equates to giving up 3.5 Starbucks coffees for that year. So if you want to go do that, that's great. It helps keep this thing alive, and you'll be supporting the scene. One final thing, a big shout out to all you folks down in Florida who just got fucked by this storm. It's pretty crazy watching the news, and I know the thing was giant, so I hope that all of you are safe and all of your family members are also safe. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I think I mentioned in the email, my old band played a couple shows with you guys before we broke up.
Yeah, I remember. Now, what was your band again?
It was called Lanemeyer.
Lanemeyer.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I think I've got a CD. Like, did you guys burn, like, burn CDs to give out?
Possibly.
You've got a sticker on the big drum coffin.
Yeah, I think I do.
There's stickers on your drum cases. I know it.
Really?
I guarantee there are Lanemeyer stickers on the drum cases.
That's crazy. Holy shit.
I know I have some Lanemeyer stuff. I can't.
Well, the funny thing is, I created an Instagram account. I'm not gonna talk about Ben the whole time, but I created an Instagram account, and there's a clip because in 2008 we were playing a reunion show, and my buddy documented it, and I just edited a clip today, just totally on accident. And it's our singer talking about him quitting the band, and I could swear you guys played this show. So we were in Pittsburgh, and it was a show with the Ataris.
Oh shit.
And I could swear that it was us, you guys, and them.
Was that like at a VFW hall thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was just kind of grouped up outside, hanging out a lot of the time. Yeah, I totally remember that one. The Ataris were weird to us that night. They were like kind of rude and shitty to us. We were each on separate tours that just happened to overlap that night. So, we're out on our own tour playing our own set. They were out on their tour doing their own set, and when it all came together, they were like, they wanted us to play like a 20-minute set or something so that we wouldn't. They were like being weird. They wanted us to play a real short one so that they could hurry up and get on stage faster. And we told them to piss off because we just did. I don't, whatever. But I remember them being like real weird to us. So for years, the Ataris would like pop up in conversation. It was like, yeah, those guys were such jerks that night. That was basically it. Not a big salacious story there, but
the funny thing was that it was on Easter. So it's such a random thing because Chris, when he's talking about it, the reason he quit was that he goes, yeah, we're playing this show, the Ataris, and Chris Rowe had this weird fucking spiked hair thing going on, and he goes, I go next door and drink sake and got drunk and called my grandmother and was like, yeah, I'm getting Kentucky Fried Chicken and that we're gonna do this, and she was like, I hope you have a better life. And that got to him, and he quit like the next day because he was so bummed out by that.
Heavy religious guilt for part on Easter Sunday.
Yeah, is this why the Lord our God allowed himself to be crucified? Was so that you could have Kentucky Fried Chicken and be sake drunk, calling your grandmother on Easter from your like gig with the weird guy who covered Boys of Summer. Yeah, totally. I can see why that would. It's a bit of a mind fuck. It's a lot of things. There's a lot going on in that story.
Thank you, Jesus. I appreciate it for what you've given us. So I think this would be interesting hearing like the tour stories, because I feel like you guys were always on the road, and it sounds like you're still like, because you guys did that and you did the Architects, and now you've got Brandon Phillips and The Condition, and then what other bands going on right now?
Other Americans and Men's a Death Squad.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I got Radar State, and then there've been like a couple of other gigs in there, but those were like the real bands.
Are these like still in all these bands, or the three of you? Because I saw in the Architects the three of you were in that band, and I was like, man, you guys really enjoy hanging out as a family.
Yeah, no, not all of the bands have all three of us. Radar State is just me and Josh Berwanger from the Anniversary and Matt and Jim from the Get Up Kids. Men's a Death Squad is Brandon's solo deal. And then we've got Other Americans with Brandon and I. Zach did the first record with us. Same with the Brandon Phillips The Condition. We never actually made an album, but Zach was playing with us at the beginning of that. Oh, well, shit, we haven't done anything for a while, actually. And the pandemic kind of took the wind out of our sails. We haven't picked back up again with that one yet.
Brandon Phillips and The Condition was always kind of a rotating cast. I didn't want anybody to feel like they were handcuffed to my stupid band.
Well, was it also because you had in other bands just had to deal with members coming and going, and you got too attached to having that set lineup be the thing that killed the band once anyone left?
I think it was because I felt handcuffed to the Architects. I think I felt handcuffed to the Architects, and I think it had been expressed to me from other members of the Architects that they felt handcuffed. If I was having a really bad creative time in the Architects, someone would, it would be sort of expressed that they were sort of handcuffed and hostage to my writer's block or whatever, or we'd all be hostage to somebody's bad mood on tour. So with BPC, I was like, I really would love it if this were just like fun, happy vibes, Posse Times band, because it's just supposed to be like fun dance music and influenced by Elvis Costello and Motown, and I don't want any like heavy vibes, so I didn't want any. I was like, well, let's just let people come and go as they please, and that's fine with me.
I feel it takes a very long time being in bands and touring to get to that point where you either in the beginning you're very business and you want to be huge. I don't think anyone starts to like, I just want to do this for fun. Like I've never really got that vibe where, unless it was like the Hold Steady maybe, where that worked for them.
Yeah. Well, we started that way. I mean, we started playing together when we were kids. So.
Well, let's start there then. Let's talk about that, because I want to start off with kind of like the origins of how you got involved in the scene, how the band started, and talk about all that. So that's a great place. Like, how'd you guys get involved in the scene?
Let me give you the capsule version of how it happens. Is you start out playing for fun because it's fun and it feels really good to play music with other people. And then the moment things sort of kind of get a little bit serious, there's someone on the periphery of your band or of your clique or whatever who says, man, you guys got to get serious. And then all this like internalized capitalism switches on and you're like, yeah, we got to get serious, and it ruins it for like the next 20 years. And then you have to like go through this whole thing of like rediscovering that it's fun to play music.
I can imagine it on Hellcat Records would be a little bit of a bump to make that happen.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
For me to be on the same label, to say nothing of opening the tour with the Slackers and Hellcat, just feeling so unbelievably outclassed. I was like, I don't know if I can work hard enough to catch up to Hellcat. And here I am, an ancient old man, and I haven't caught up to Hellcat. I'm not that good. But it's still in my head working on me. Like, oh, man, I got to get that good because they're great, right? You want to be that.
Well, how do you guys lead then? So, because everyone really loves to know how the people I interviewed got involved in the scene, and then we talk about the career that you had. So just before we dive into the band and then getting signed and all that stuff, like how did you guys get involved in the local scene around you?
I was a little kid, right? I was like 9 years old. We started playing music together. I had no idea what the history of our local Kansas City area music scene was at all. I just knew that I liked all of these bands, and we were trying to make music that jived with all this stuff that we liked. We were sort of isolated, like out in the burbs, and also isolated by age. We just started playing shows, and then, eventually enough people saw us and dug it. They started coming out really regularly, and we sort of had a little scene going on. But I was not at all aware of the scene really before I was playing shows as a part of it. And I don't mean that in like a braggadocious way or anything. I was like a dumb little kid. I had no idea.
How old are you?
Well, when we started gigging a lot like that, I was like 11 and 12. Yeah, so we started. There was this really cool little all ages club in town called the Daily Grind, and we used to play there a lot. And we had a cool little scene popping up, and the local show promoters started throwing us on opening slots for other bands coming through town. It was all going well, and then they put us on opening up for Rancid when Rancid just put out And Out Come the Wolves, and they were coming to town, and we got to open up that show, and that's when Tim saw us play and invited us to play another show with him in Omaha a few months later, and that's when he told us about his plan to start a record label and wants to sign us and all this stuff. So it all happened really fast. I mean, I think I was 12 when we played the first show with Rancid, and then 13 when we played the second one with them. And then by the time I was 14, we were in the recording studio recording that first Hellcat record.
I didn't realize you guys were that young.
Yeah. I'm the youngest one, but yeah.
What's the age range go? Who's the oldest? And then
I'm the oldest. Adam's the youngest.
I mean, I grew up, me and my sister fought all the time until I was like 18. Like, how did three brothers just get along that well to just start off wanting to be in a band?
Toxic codependency.
Yeah. There was definitely an amount of toxic codependency, but it also it probably would have been very different if we weren't getting a positive response to the band. If no one was showing up to the shows, it might not have lasted 10% as long. But we're getting all this positive reinforcement and shit, so it felt good.
So, Brandon, were you the one who brought the idea of playing ska to the table, or was that someone else?
Maybe. I think I had found like Fishbone and Operation Ivy maybe 10 minutes before Adam and Zach did. So it might have been me that handed off the tape that led to us playing ska. Maybe. Is that Adam? Does that sound?
Yeah. That sounds right. I mean, we were
okay.
Zach and I were little kids, and Brandon and his other older cool friends kept bringing cool music around. Kind of, it started with heavy metal, a bunch of metal bands. We were listening to all that shit, and then it quickly went from metal into punk rock, and then from punk rock we discovered ska, and it was just, we were just impulsive kids. So you were doing one song that's very Ramones influenced because we were listening to a lot of Ramones, and then now we're playing Operation Ivy records in the house, or we're listening to the Specials. So yeah, why the fuck not add a ska part to this song or that song, and it was just kind of a whirlwind of influences, decide we fall in love with something and then try to do our own version of it just over and over again. That took us from like just being a punk rock band to playing a bunch of ska in there to being, I don't know what the hell we turned into, but we discovered soul music and real slick bands like Hellcat and the Slackers and stuff. So we were trying to play that stuff. Then we discovered Elvis Costello and these other bands. So the second Hellcat record was a whole whirlwind of different influences than the first one. And the first Hellcat record was a whirlwind of different influences compared to the stuff we were doing before we got signed. We had put out, we'd like self-released a record that was like real snotty, bratty ska punk. So it's like we just kept changing.
Is that the gravy on yo grits?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't speak the name.
Well, I was going to ask you, I was like, before Hellcat, I'm like, what's this Joko ska records? But it sounds like you just answered that.
Okay,
Yep.
so this is actually like maybe a part of a good answer to your original question about how we got into the scene. Was we sort of made our own, in as much as like me and a couple of my high school friends, we had all been doinking around in bands, and we were all interested in ska and punk rock, and that's sort of what we ended up playing. So we just started making records like with, like an 8-track tape thing, making records in my mom's basement. Like we set up the 8-track machine in a closet and then used the big basement room to cut drums and shit. And we just started like duping tapes by hand and taking a briefcase full of tapes to these all ages shows that we would play. And we decided to start a label. It was like, well, we'll just start our own little label. And we put out the Gadjits record and a couple of my friends' bands records, or like demo tapes or whatever, however you want to call it. And then we ended up doing a 7-inch for Isaac Green and the Scholars. Like, I don't know, there was a few other things, none of which were especially phenomenal except for that Isaac Green and the Scholars record.
Did people take you seriously since you were so young?
Sometimes they did.
Which is crazy because it's like, we're adults. I don't understand how this doesn't really benefit anyone. There was definitely a bit of that when we were kids. But then I think we were so earnest and exuberant, and we were so into what we were doing that a lot of older musicians decided to kind of swoop in and be our protectors, at least in some way, shape, or form. A lot of older bands or older musicians would kind of take us under their wing and help us figure out how to be real musicians. Like I still credit like Hellcat and the Slackers and a few other people with like, these are the people who taught me how to be a musician, for real, how to be a musician.
Is that because they saw in you talent and they wanted to help that? Or were they just like, oh, these are cool little kids, so we just want to help them around?
I wish I could say it was because they saw talent.
Yeah,
I think
you'd have to ask them. I don't know.
I mean, I think with Hellcat, they took us under their wing because we had a van that was catching on fire constantly, and they were like, we can't let these kids get stranded in the middle of the desert in a flaming van, so we're just going to caravan with them for the rest of the tour, right? Or we're going to make one of our guys ride with them. But it's like, they surely didn't have to do that. They could have just cut us loose, like, and made us fend for ourselves, but they didn't. They took us under their wing at least a little. Those lessons are set pretty deep, at least with me.
Yeah.
So this kind of reminds me when we played in Louisville. I'm sure you guys must have, because you guys were basically like road dogs, right? Like you guys were always on the road.
Yeah.
For a while we were, yeah.
There was a place, there was an arcade in Louisville that we'd play all the time, and it was such a great show. And there was a band called Emmanuel Nice. Did you remember them?
Yeah, I know that name. I don't know if we ever played with them, but I know.
They became Emmanuel, then they were on Vagrant Records.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we would go there, they were like 16 years old, and we were like, oh, it's like, these cute little punk band, like, oh, these little kids, like kind of grab them by the head and like, give them noogies in their head and shit like that. Later on, when they became Emmanuel, I never really listened to any of their other stuff, and they put Emmanuel out. And I was just talking about it the other day to somebody because I had interviewed Matt, and I was like, this record blew my fucking like dick off. It was so good, and I just, when they were younger kids, I never really gave them the time of day for some reason. And it just kind of reminded me of that with you guys coming up being so young, if you got that from older bands.
Oh, plenty of them wanted to just blow us off. But yeah, enough of those bands really came through for us that, it helped in some pretty meaningful ways at the time. The stuff that Rancid did for us, the stuff that Hellcat and the Slackers did for us,
the snarky shit,
the Bouncing Souls, like a lot of these bands were doing a lot cooler things for us than they ever needed to.
The snarky, nasty shit came from journalists, not from other musicians.
Like zines and things like that, or like magazines?
Oh, no, it was like out of every 50 reviews, there'd be somebody who thought it was like, oh, this is my, this band of kids is my opportunity to really pound on somebody who can't hit back or who's less likely to hit back or whatever the fuck their thinking was. They would just, we were a pretty appetizing target if you were looking to ply your trade as one of those like super snarky music journalists. And
Yeah.
that happened a few times.
Concert promoters, same deal. I mean, concert promoters would bully us around for being kids who couldn't do anything about it, underpaying us, stuff like that. There's plenty of that stuff that went on through the years, different parts of the scene. But yeah, mostly wasn't from other bands.
Did you guys feel that going through that kind of molded you a little bit when you're on the road, where you'd get in the van and you'd have that experience and you'd be driving away like, what the fuck? And then it just kind of maybe molded you and just kind of hardened you a little bit, where you had tougher skin and then you were able to turn that into your favor when you played shows?
Probably.
That's a nice thought. I'm not sure.
I mean, this is all, again, like, it's just my mind just kind of goes there, that I like just thinking of how hearing these little nuances in a band starting, of how it molds them or creates them later on, where you guys may not have seen that, but it might be something where you thought to yourself one time, like, fuck yeah, it did.
Yeah. Shoot. I'm trying to think of this. There's a song that this reminds me of, and I can't think of the name of it. I'll think of it. My point is that this stuff, it does kind of mold you, but like the funny thing is that like now I really only feel like it didn't toughen me up. It just made me a little bit more circumspect about it, because like when I get off this thing, I have to go take my little solo show across town and open for She Passed Away. I'm sure everything's going to be on the up and up, but if somebody tries to like screw me around on the money or screw me out of my sound check or cut my set short or something like that, maybe because of my experiences, I could like draw some hard line in the sand about it and be like, like, fuck you are. And, you don't know who I am. I've been doing this a long time or whatever. But more than likely, I'm going to be like, yeah, okay, you do what you gotta, and like walk away.
I think more of it's like in the live show, though. There's something about seeing a band when they're starting and they're just so green and they're just uncomfortable.
Oh, God, yeah.
And then later on, they just own the stage. Just that you just see the confidence when they get up there.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of like leaning towards.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
But it does bleed into the show promoter thing too. But I think getting on stage, it's almost like you're proving something more at that point. And then you just don't give a fuck, and then it really comes through.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes. And I noticed that too, just with like the harder the gig is. Sometimes when you're playing in front of absolutely no one, or absolutely no one who gives a fuck, that can really bring out the best in us. Sometimes when you know you're not already welcome, it kind of gives you a little bit more to prove when you get up there, and you can find some extra power somewhere to really give them hell. But
that definitely got baked in. That got baked in really deep with us, because I know we did a lot of tours where we were opening for hard people to open for.
Like who?
I mean, it's not easy to open for Hellcat and the Slackers. And
No.
if you're not as good as them, like and we just weren't. We were fine, but we weren't that good. We weren't that level of like tight and professional, and opening for that, or us going and opening for the Bouncing Souls. And like, there was some pretty wild ass, like the bill is like us, the Casualties, the Bouncing Souls. So like, we're definitely the soft little marshmallow snowballs on the bill, right?
Yeah.
But like, so we did not have necessarily an easy time doing that. And so I know there was like this, we would do certain shows where we would just be in like oppositional defiance mode, where it was just like, we're playing this show really well as revenge for the people who don't like it. We're going to make it so good that fuck you, right? Like that was the whole, like,
Yep.
We would just have this like defiant reaction to somebody throwing shit at us or whatever, or hurling insults. And that got baked in really deep. And like, it got baked in so deep that to this day, when I see people who walk out on stage like exuding positivity and warmth, I'm like, how the fuck do you do that? Like,
yeah.
like, I'm still a performer. This will be like my second show in 5 days tonight. If someone walks out on stage exuding that kind of like cool warmth, or they're like fun and friendly, I'm like, how do you do that? I don't get it. Like, I go out there assuming everyone's my enemy until they prove they're not.
We were always sort of like we never really fit in with any of the scenes, right? There were like these really cliquey scenes, tough guy street punk shit over there, and the emo vagrant stuff over there, and the ska punk bands over here, and these real slick ska bands over there. And we were just never in line with any of those scenes. We toured with a ton of those bands. We did a bunch of fun stuff. We never really got embraced by any of that.
You know, I was actually gonna say that because I remember I kind of felt that you guys and it, like Brandon, your personality for some reason reminds me of Billy from the Blue Meanies. And it was funny because I just did a Google search because I was going to ask because I interviewed Billy and he was just a riot to talk to, and they had a really hard time fitting in. And I kind of felt I was like when I was thinking about you guys, I was like I feel like you guys had the same thing that they had because the ska thing starts to really it hits hard and then it just starts to go away really fast where people like turn their backs on it in like 99 2000. And then you guys like just stick through that shit kind of like they did. So I can imagine you just trying to figure out like where the fuck do we belong right now?
Yeah. And that's funny because like Billy was the guy who headhunted us to Thick Records. I'm sure that one of the reasons he liked us was that we were a weird misfit band. We were not like anybody else. And at that point, we were so embroiled in that oppositional defiance that we were like determined to be even less like anybody else. Like it was like, what's the latest thing? Fuck the latest thing. You know, what's coming up behind that? Fuck that too. Like we were just really doubling down on us, right? Like whatever we liked, that was the coolest thing in the universe. And we were going to prove it every night.
Yeah. Well, and if it got popular, we were trying to jump off that train.
Jesus. You guys are really working against yourselves here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's, yeah.
Was this something you would say to each other in the van, though? Would you talk about this and say, you know what, man, fuck this? Or was it kind of just happening without you guys having a conversation?
We would have some super frustrating conversations in the van trying to figure out like our place in the world. I don't know if everybody worried about, I know that it was always a thing that I would stress out about. It was like, where do we fit in the world? Like, where do we belong? And I know that we've had like many arguments that lasted for way too many hours, you know, because there was always this sense of like, well, what do you want to do? Change? And it was, I was like, I don't know. I'm just asking, where do we belong? Like,
when you guys got on Hellcat, to kind of go back a little bit, did you guys know the Wicks, Chris?
Hell yes.
Really love the Wicks. And I listened to that interview you did with her, and I loved it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I thought it because it was Hellcat. I was like, oh my God, I talked to her. She was great. And what was your, like from hearing the interview and like what she saw with the label and stuff, like when you were working with her, what was it like?
So the Wicks was always just this amazing, positive ray of sunshine. She just had a real strong thing about her. She was always right about everything, all of the advice she ever gave us. She was awesome. She was really awesome. And one time she actually came out on the road with us for some dates. It was fucking hilarious. We went to California to play some shows with Stiff Little Fingers. Stiff Little Fingers and the Gadjits, and the opening act was this little band that no one had ever heard of called Flogging Molly. The Wicks had introduced us to Flogging Molly 6 months earlier. We had like a day off in LA, and the Wicks took us to this club called Fado Do to watch. And I remember it vividly. It was Iambic Pentameter up first, and then Phantom Planet, who no one had ever heard of, and Flogging Molly. And, you know, it's a nice big club. There was like no one there. It was a very empty room. And we're standing there watching Flogging Molly, and they were awesome. And we had a great time. A couple months later, it was like, hey, you're going to do these shows with Stiff Little Fingers. Any recommendations for opening acts? And it was like, yeah, Flogging Molly would be rad. And then a couple weeks later, we see Flogging Molly's been added to the bill. And it was like, yes, this is great. So anyway, we go out to do these shows. There was a really weird miscommunication where apparently Stiff Little Fingers thought that they were going to be using all of our equipment to perform because they're just flying in. And so they're supposed to use our bass rig, our drum set, our guitar rig. But no one had told us this. This is before cell phones, smartphones and shit. So, we just get to the club when we got to the club for load in, and the Stiff Little Fingers are there, and they're super pissed off at us. And their tour manager starts chewing me out, yelling in my face. We're like, holy shit, what is going on? We finally figure it out that they're using our gear. Okay. So we uncase all the gear, and then they're pissed they don't like our gear. Okay. So then we go from, what was it, like LA to San Francisco. It was like San Diego, LA, San Francisco. So we get to San Francisco. They're furious that we're not there earlier. And the Wicks jumps out of the van and grabs their tour manager and drags them around the corner, and you can hear little bits of the Wicks voice getting louder, chewing this guy out. He comes back around the corner. He does head down. He's been shamed. The show goes on, and at the end of the night, they came out and they had all autographed one of their drum heads for me as a way to say sorry for yelling at me every day about how long it took us to get to the gig and not liking our gear. That memory always sticks out because the Wicks just tore that guy apart, and then they did this stupid gesture of signing a drum head for me. I still have the drum head.
So it made an impact on you.
It was It was Stiff Little Fingers, but Bruce Foxton from the Jam was playing bass with them, so it was kind of extra salty for me, being a huge Jam fan, that I was like, oh, not only are Stiff Little Fingers being dicks to us, but so's this guy from the Jam. Awesome. Any of my other heroes maybe want to show up and piss in my face? That'd be cool.
It's weird that they would have used someone's equipment, being such a band that had been around for a while.
I just want to make sure I state that I have zero hard feelings for either Mr. Foxton or Stiff Little Fingers. I'm not mad at all.
Yeah, in retrospect, it just makes me love the Wicks even more, not hate you guys more. Yeah.
When you said she gave you advice, that seems that she was more taking charge, seeing you guys getting kind of just pushed on. What did she tell you? I don't know, was there some thing or two things that she told you where you were like, this actually helped us out, or I still do this today?
Well, she literally just told me not to take any shit from people. Yeah, that definitely had an impact. I started taking less shit from more people.
So you're basically on Hellcat until it says you signed with Thick Records in 2002, which doesn't mean that you're on the label from 97 to 2002. You're gonna leave that or get dropped at some point.
We got dropped in 2000, and then RCA was when was that? When was RCA? 2002?
No. RCA after Thick. So that was Billy.
Yeah.
That was Billy's whole thing with signing us to Thick. He said, guys, you need a label. We can do that for you. Let's do this, but we're only doing one record. We are not doing two, because by the end of the first record, I'm going to get you guys signed to a major.
So he gets you signed to RCA?
Yeah. He's like, you have no business being records for more than one record. You got to get a record out. Let's do it right. We'll get you signed to a major, and then you'll be on to different shit. God, Billy just worked his magic and worked his butt off, and we stayed on tour for ages, and we ended up signing to RCA, about a year or so after.
How different does it look when being on Hellcat is one thing, because they were a subsidiary of Epitaph, so they have money backing them, and then Thick was basically kind of a dismantled record company at that point. So Billy helps out Zach, and he's like, we're just going to kind of do this thing. So, that's as far as money-wise, it's a step back from what they're able to put behind the record. But then you jump to RCA, which is huge at that point. Are they still around?
Well, initially what killed our career with RCA was they merged with Jive. Yeah. And so Clive Davis took over, and we are not very Clive Davis. Or at least we were not very Clive Davis. I finally feel like now at this age, I'm finally ready to be Whitney Houston. If Clive Davis is ready to be Clive Davis, but I'm willing to try. If Clive's willing, I'm willing. But I have the maturity to be Whitney Houston, I think.
If you got the pipes, man,
Well, I might. We don't know.
Was it like everything? I don't know. I don't even know what you guys were really looking for. It sounds that, since I said earlier that you guys were like road dogs and you agreed, it sounds like you just wanted to stay on the road and didn't really give a shit where that took you.
Pretty much. I mean, we were trying to follow our nose. I mean, we were young. We were growing up, so we kept figuring out more shit that we could do, and we kept figuring out what we were good at that we liked versus what we weren't very good at that we liked. And, you know, we just kept changing over the years. We wanted to keep the train moving forward. We didn't really.
There was a weird thing with us because, like, you know, it's like we said, we never really fit in with any one part of the scene or any of the scene cliques. We never really belonged anywhere, except that we sort of elbowed our way in everywhere. So there was a lot of like struggle to feel like we belonged. But in that struggle, every third show, we would fucking decimate the place, and we felt like we were decimating the place. And it was like, well, this is evidence that we're something. We're not nothing. We got to keep trying, right? Like, we got to keep going, even though I can't say that we're part of this movement, you know, this musical movement or that musical movement necessarily. I can tell we're something.
Did you have fun on the road, or did it get a little frustrating if you weren't really getting much of a response from the crowd?
It got really frustrating several times. Like, it was, you know, because we were pretty much saying yes to everything just to stay out on the road. I don't know. Our feeling then and now really is that, like, nothing's happening if you're not out in front of an audience. Your trade exists out in front of an audience. If you're Whitney Houston or Machine Gun Kelly or something like that, then maybe your trade exists. Maybe there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more marketing and a lot more public relations and more moving parts and whatever. But for us, the sense really then and for me still now is that, like, you're not plying your trade if you're not in front of an audience.
What places around the country did you guys actually have like a pocket of just the best shows?
And industrial cities.
Like where?
Rust Belt cities like Detroit and Cleveland, and, you know, anywhere in Ohio, anywhere in Michigan, Wisconsin, you know, the northern Midwest was awesome for us.
For a little while, Chicago was really happening.
Yeah, Chicago was awesome for us.
When we finally went up to tour Canada, we did great up there.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Omaha was like, it's weird though, because it kind of changed over the years with how we were changing the band. When we were kids, Omaha was like our second home, and we played there all the time and had these awesome shows at this little punk club called the Cog Factory. And then there was another moment in time where Chicago was like our home away from home, and we were in Chicago all the time playing great little shows.
I feel like there was I think, not to take away from a band being good or anything, but Chicago was always so welcoming to just everybody. But not like just if you suck, they were like that. I'm saying, like, I just felt that there was always a giant crowd. There were so many people there. There was always a huge section that would just come and support the fuck out of any bands that they were at, like the Fireside or any Legion Hall out there. It was like the best experience there.
Well, so yeah. I don't know that I agree with that 100%, but I'll say the Fireside had a really special thing going on because Brian Peterson, the guy that used to book the Fireside Bowl, he just had this special touch where it's like anytime we were playing there, it was never the bill we wanted it to be, right? We're going to put together a tour. It's us and this band and that band. And when we do that show everywhere around the country, except when we're in Chicago, Brian Peterson's going to stick 3 extra bands on the bill. And it was like, man, on paper, that looks like shit. But when you show up, it was always so fucking cool. It was like, oh, this is supposed to be another one of these, the Stereo and the Gadjits tours. But we show up to Chicago and we're playing with the Kills and Eastern Youth and like just like this, you know, these mishmash lineups that were the fucking coolest. And luckily,
that Eastern Youth show was awesome.
Yeah, Chicago was just sophisticated enough that like they weren't opposed to that shit. They were fine with mixing and matching the genres and shit. Whereas in a lot of other parts of the country, people are so stuck up about that. They're like, oh, how dare a fast band play with a band that plays only slow stuff? How dare a psychedelic band play with a band of straight edge kids? Or,
I was going to say that if you contrast Chicago at that exact time with like kind of like outside of LA California shows, you know, like when you go play like Oxnard and Ventura and whatever, those shows, the last thing in the universe you wanted to be was us, or a band that wasn't really attractive boys in shorts with Mesa Boogie dual rectifiers sounding just like Phoenix TX or whatever. Like you had to be that.
Yeah,
everybody had bill. Every show was that. It was 5 of those on every show. Like
California sucked in general to play at. Like I don't know. It
was hard.
It was really. I mean, the Bay Area I thought it was Los Gatos. That was a cool show, and that was a really cool crowd. But then as you got closer to LA, they were just kind of arms folded, just kind of look at you like, what the fuck is this? And you're like, all right, we're not No Effects or Pennywise. Get fucked.
Yep.
Yeah. There was a lot of like locals rule.
And that because this is like fresh on my mind, that particular tour where we were out with the Stereo and we played the Fireside Bowl and they added the Kills and Eastern Youth. And there was another band on the bill too. It was like a 5-band bill already. Brian Peterson comes up. I'm standing there bullshitting with, I think it was you, Brandon, and Jamie and BJ from the Stereo. We were all standing around bullshitting, and Brian Peterson comes up and he says, "Hey guys, look, there's this group of kids out front. They're huge Stereo fans, and they've been begging me for weeks to let them open up the show. I keep telling them for weeks, like, no, we've already got a 5-band bill put together. That's already too many bands. Let's not put you on this one. We'll give you another shot some other time, kids." But they showed up to the show anyway, all of them wearing the Stereo t-shirts with their gear ready to play if they'll be given this opportunity at the last moment to jump up there and play some songs. So Brian Peterson tells us this, and he's got these sort of puppy dog eyes. I look over at Jamie and BJ from the Stereo. I was like, dude, these guys are like super fans. You got to let them get up there and play some songs. Like, who gives a shit at this point? There's already 5 bands. Well, why not add a 6th? Who cares, right? And they're like, yeah, all right, fine. Let them play. But you were cutting them off at 30 minutes. Like, don't let them go over. Okay. So they jumped up there and they played, and it was really pretty adorable. They were all wearing Stereo gear, like head to toe, and they were playing these songs that sounded like all they listened to is the Stereo. You know, they thanked everybody a million times. They were just so grateful that the Stereo let them jump on the show. That band is Fall Out Boy.
I was like, there has to be this reveal where it's going to be something like that. Oh my God. That makes so much sense because Patrick is a huge Animal Chin fan.
Yep.
I'm surprised you gave him 30 minutes too. I've been like, you got 10. Then get the fuck off.
Right. No, I mean, it was really cool. But the main point of the story, though, is that like I played a pretty pivotal part in the success of Fall Out Boy. So that's
that's what I was. Yeah, I got that. I got that from that story actually.
Yeah, your role cannot be understated.
No.
Was this the Stereo minus Rory, or was he still in the band at that point?
Yeah. No, Rory was long gone. We did a bunch of touring with the Stereo, but none of it with Rory. And actually, one of those was at with the Ataris. The Ataris, the Gadjits, the Stereo.
And that was the night that Jim wanted to fight Chris Rowe.
Yes, because he was still holding a grudge because the Ataris were dicks to us months earlier when we played that show with Lanemeyer.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there you go. Full circle.
It's fucking Ataris, man. So when you guys are like going into the 2000s and all, and then, I mean, at this point, you guys are really kind of swimming upstream between really the ska thing, which I'm sure it's probably comes up in conversation. Like I bring that up to any ska band I talk to because ska bands got a lot of them got just so shit on back then, and then you're going into the 2000s where everything's changing in sound. What did that look like for you?
We were already sort of transitioning out of playing so much ska in the set, but we still ended up touring with a bunch of ska bands. The weird part of that time for us was that we had discovered all this other music and we had sort of begun to move on to some other shit. So now we're playing like 0 ska songs in the set, but we're on tour with Real Big Fish. We're on tour with the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. We're on tour. We're even headline tours. One time we showed up to we're doing a big long headline tour, and we show up to the show in Quebec City. They've built a fucking 12-band ska fest with us as the headliner, and we're not playing any fucking ska on the set. So there was definitely some weirdness around that time. I attribute that mostly to our being stubborn and just doing whatever the fuck we wanted to do instead of paying any attention to what people expected us or wanted us to do.
Did you guys like last minute try to change up the set to just accommodate the ska thing, or do we? It sounds to me that the answer would be no, because you're like, no, we just completely went against the grain all the time.
Yeah, mostly.
We're pretty much against the grain all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the weird thing is that, like, what we were doing without really even knowing it, like, what we were doing was so much Joe Strummer, right? It was just like, whatever you think is cool, make it a part of your band, right? So whether it's ska or reggae or rockabilly or whatever you're into, just fold it into the mix and do it. That's like the founding principle of the Clash, right? And I don't think that we were necessarily aware of that, but it was just sort of like naturally how we fell. Naturally how it fell into place for us was like, we just want to do what we want to do. And you know what? We got a lot of blowback for that. We definitely got a lot of pushback from
Yep.
We got dropped from Hellcat over that.
Okay, wait. So you got dropped from the label because you were changing your sound so much?
Totally.
Yeah. They got, so it was actually real. I don't want to like dive too deep into it for whatever. First we did they signed us when we were like a ska punk band. And then we're in the studio making the first record with Tim Armstrong producing, and the first record for Hellcat. And we had decided that we wanted to be some mishmash of Hellcat and the Slackers and all of our favorite soul bands. So that's the record we were sort of trying to make that time. And then we made the second record, and we're trying to be our bizarro version of Elvis Costello and the Attractions. And then it comes time for us to make the third record. We recorded it, and there's like country songs on the record and a funk song on the record and just totally different stuff. There was one reggae song on the record, no ska at all. They heard the record. It was this weird conflicted response. It was like, hey, you guys are doing some good stuff here, but there is no way that country music and punk rock are ever going to coexist. You can't do this. We can't put this out on Hellcat Epitaph with country songs on it. And it was like a big kick in the gut. And then it was fucking hilarious as time went on. And they went through a couple of years of putting out, every one of their bands did a solo country
acoustic record.
It was just fucking hilarious to me. We were ahead of the curve on that one. I mean, we didn't nail it. We could have used some help, making it better. But we were onto something, and they were not feeling it at all until years later.
Yeah, we just needed help. I mean, we needed help, and we weren't really getting it. And it was, it's.
What do you mean you needed help? Like, in what way?
Well, like we got into a place where there was like a lot of different influences in the mixing bowl, and like none of them were bad, but we definitely needed someone with more experience, someone who was who could be a little bit more circumspect about it, to go, oh, okay, you guys could make like your Sandinista. You just need somebody to be the guide here, and really come in and like produce or executive produce this, and you could make a record that has a lot in common with Sandinista, but in that it's kind of all over the place, but it's still good at its core. It's still obviously the Clash at its core, right? We sort of meekly asked for help, but we didn't know what we were asking for. We just knew that it was like, hey, we have a lot going on, and we're confused about what to do. What do we do? And they were like, we don't know.
Would you have been receptive to that though?
We were literally asking for it at the time. We were kids too, so I'm sure it would have been messy if we got what we asked for. But we were like literally asking for help. The first record we did with Hellcat, Tim Armstrong produced it. The second one, Vic from the Slackers and Vic Ruggiero and Vic Rice both produced the second one. And then that third one, we were just in there alone, just banging it out. And we could have used somebody to be the producer.
Was the Wicks still working there at that time?
No.
Yeah, like right around the time that she was gone.
Did that have a bit of a negative effect on you guys because she left?
Well, like the Wicks left, and there was a bunch of human drama at the label. People were taking time off to go get clean and stuff. There wasn't like the human resources that we needed. You could still get somebody on the phone, but they weren't necessarily able to like give you the help you needed.
I didn't realize at the time, but I think the Wicks having left the label had a much bigger impact than we realized at the time.
Yeah, because I mean, she was literally the one running around advocating for what people needed.
But what was really rad years later, we kept in touch with the Wicks, and when we were cutting the record that came out on Thick, the Wicks came through town. She was out with the Stomp. The production of Stomp was coming through Kansas City for a few days. She says, "Hey, can I come? What are you guys up to? I want to see you." We said, "We're in the studio." She said, "Great. Can I come down there?" "Yeah, absolutely." She says, "Hey, can I bring Stomp with me?" We're like, "Yeah, all right." The Wicks and Stomp came down to the studio, and the guys from Stomp sing and play hand drums and shit on the record.
Wait, why was she with Stomp?
Well, I think she was like a merchandise manager or something. I can't remember what she was doing.
Oh, shit.
She was doing some tour job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually just found her Instagram. She's like doing a lot of art these days.
Well, she just posted a picture too of all these, like a box full of old tapes that she has, like high 8 tapes and DAT tapes and shit. And one of them in the picture is labeled Gadjits with Stomp.
Oh, that's crazy.
You gotta make that playable. I gotta know what's on that tape.
Oh my God, that's awesome. It's so random that she just did that, and you're talking about that story like right now.
It's probably us just smoking pot with Stomp. Like
that works. So at the moment you go to Thick, is it kind of like you're feeling like we're going backwards now?
No, it wasn't like back to back like that though. We submitted the record we made to Hellcat. They cut us loose and told us, we could take it wherever we wanted. And then we just went back out on the road and toured for a while. It wasn't like immediate. That I guess it wasn't too long of a wait, but it didn't feel like some immediate thing. It felt like we had already kind of realized what we needed to do to just stay on the road and keep shit moving before we actually found Thick and made that deal happen. I don't remember it feeling bad to sign on with Thick. It felt bad to get rejected by Hellcat. I think there was enough time to lick our wounds before we did the deal with Thick, where I don't remember feeling that way anyway.
So I'm looking through the list, and I remember that you had a keyboardist, and so basically the way you guys were set up was Brandon, you played guitar and sang, and then Adam, you're on drums, and then Zach was bass player, and then you had a revolving door of keyboardists?
Yeah.
So you went through 5. Why did that happen?
Wait, 5 or just...
No. I think you're mixing it up. So originally it was like when we were little kids, it was just the 3 of us, right? And then we signed to Hellcat, and we decided that we needed some keyboards in the band. Our friend Heidi joined the group and cut that first record with us, but she was not ready to like be a road dog and tour with us. So she left the band to go to school, and we found Hillary who joined up, who could tour. So, and we did all the touring on that first record with Hillary, and then made the second record with her. It was like right after we got dropped from Hellcat, we did a real weird local show in Kansas City that was an AC/DC tribute show. There's this other band in town called the Revolvers, who were like this dynamite punk rock band, and their guitar player Mike agreed to be Angus for the Gadjits set of AC/DC material, and Brandon was going to join the Revolvers to be Malcolm for their set of AC/DC material. When we got together and started playing with Mike, it just felt awesome. We all just decided right away, like, hey, let's cut the bullshit and just make this official. Just be a part of the band. This rules. Basically, that was it. Mike was a member of the Gadjits from then on. And then what was it that we did the Thick record. We toured on that, and then at a certain point, Hillary had to step back, so she left the band, and I got my old friend Aaron Starks to join the band, and he toured with us for years and cut the RCA stuff with us. Yeah, then when he left the band, just for a brief moment, Adrienne from the Anniversary played with us. That was like right after the shit had hit the fan with the Anniversary and
the divorce.
The divorce, all this fucking drama. We were so fucking far away from that. We had nothing to do with any of that shit. So we were like a safe landing spot for Adrienne, and we needed somebody too. We were just cutting this record. That record ended up coming out as the first Architects record. It was sort of recorded to be the next Gadjits record, but released as the Architects. So Adrienne had like joined up with the band for a little while, and she recorded some stuff on that record, mostly like backup vocals. And then she left. Then she was on to some other shit.
That must have been crazy for a minute, because when Guilt Show comes out, that was very directed at that whole thing. That was like a big, we don't have to talk about it, but like, I just remember that whole big thing happening at that time.
Yeah, and I know that was really important for a lot of people, but they weren't even on my radar. Like, I wasn't following any of that shit. Mostly I cared about the Anniversary stuff because, like, Josh Berwanger was an old friend from way back. All the members of the Anniversary were kind of pals, but especially Josh. I mean, Brandon had released Josh's first demo tape out of that Joko Ska record label, and we had, known him for ages. So, and we sort of followed enough about the Anniversary that I knew a little bit about the Get Up Kids stuff, but I just wasn't focused on it at all. So I had no idea what the deal was with the Guilt Show record or how powerful that was for the people involved.
Yeah, it wasn't really a good record either, so you didn't really miss much.
There you go.
Oh, that's really bad to say, since like two members are in a band with you or Brandon.
With me,
okay.
But I won't tell them. Don't worry.
But you guys transitioned from the Gadgits to Architects when you're still in RCA. So you release a Gadgits record on RCA and then you put out another one with the Architects?
No, we recorded some stuff for RCA, but before a real record was done, they had this big merger with Jive Records, and the guy who signed us was cut loose in that deal. The way those mergers work is, a couple of people from one label take the helm and a couple of people from the other label get cut out, and they're all supposed to learn how to play nice. But when our guy got cut, we were free of our contract. The way our contract worked, we didn't have to stick around. And when we tried to sort of take the pulse of some other label people who were going to be there, none of them made it sound like it was going to be friendly at all. So we said, let's just get the fuck out of here then. So then we went and made a record on our own, and that record got released as The Architects.
Did you guys feel that gave you a little bit more, I don't know, like a little revitalization, change the name and feeling like a fresh start almost?
Yeah. That was the idea. And just to cut loose all the baggage, right? Like, we were sick of showing up and expecting, having audience members expecting us to play old ska songs, right? We wanted to cut all that shit loose so we could just keep doing what we wanted to do. But the flip side to that is now we're fresh new band that no one's ever heard of and starting from scratch. So two sides to that coin.
When you're starting a brand new name, there's a part of you that thinks you could just go out on the road and have the same thing happen, but you're basically starting from scratch. Yeah.
Yep.
We definitely suffered that decision, like there were consequences to that decision, and we definitely ate those consequences and cleaned our plates. It was a really long journey to get back to a place where we felt, where we felt like we were doing something worthwhile again. Like we weren't just like scratching it out, trying to prove ourselves all over again. Cause that part can be really frustrating. if you feel like your dues are paid, but they're not. I know there were plenty of times when we were like, why did we do this? Oh my God.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely happened.
Yeah.
There were definitely there was a terrible show here or there where we're just like, oh my God, why did we do this?
Well, it says on Wikipedia that it said you guys, as of 2017, you released 6 albums and 2 EPs. Is that right, or is that because I know there's another Epitaph band out called Architects that's like super metal and shit. So as I'm like looking up information about you guys, I keep running into them, and I watched this video and I was like, I don't think this is the same band.
No.
Yeah, no, probably not.
So we did how many? We did Keys to the Building, Revenge, Vice, Hardway, Border Wars 1, Border Wars 2. So yeah, that's 6 records there. Oh, and Live in Los Angeles, yeah.
So that whole time that you guys are doing that, though, you, like, Brandon, you're saying that you were like, why the fuck do we do this? But then you put out that many albums afterwards?
I mean, there were definitely times, especially early on in the Architects, where we were like, oh my God, we should have just kept being the Gadjits, right? You know, as we sort of developed the Architects into its own thing, it just became its own thing. And it was like, yeah, this is great. I mean, certainly by the time we got to Revenge and Vice, like, we'd kind of figured out a thing that we were going to do. You know, it was like, oh, okay, this is what this band sounds like now.
By the time you get to those releases, what years are they happening?
2007 and 8.
So, I mean, you guys are literally seeing just this crazy transition over the years of just how the scene's changing around you. And I kind of felt that in like 2010, 11, 12, like it kind of started to get away. I think it already had gotten away from that whole glamcore crap that was happening, and music started being good again.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think I know what you're talking about, but we just, there were so many little scenes, and most of them were just not on my radar at all. I don't know. It's weird. There was just a lot of that stuff I was willfully ignorant about because I just didn't give a shit. I don't want to know. I don't want to learn it. You know?
Well, I was thinking more the fact that like it seemed like that time period was a bit more encompassing, where you could kind of be a part of something instead of having to be so divisive is the right word, like separative. I don't know, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be us if we were included.
You just had to stay on brand the whole time.
Well,
Kind of.
yeah, sort of.
Kind of.
There's just this gut reaction, you know. You gotta stay true to yourself, and if what your gut's telling you is get away from this scene, you just do it.
We did the 2009 Warped Tour. That was the one, right, Adam? Whole thing?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So it was 2009. We did that Warped Tour, and it was like with all, like, there was so many of those, like, glammy bands, right? Like Escape the Fate and, you know, all that kind of thing. There was a ton of that, but there was also, like, on that Warped Tour, there was, like, a clique of bands that sort of formed up around Gallows and Alexis on Fire, and, you know, and then there was, like, us and Therefore I Am and the AKAs and a few other bands that just sort of, like, glommed onto each other because we were all we are not glamcore, we are not this, we're something else completely, you know, and we're not Attack.
There was a whole bunch of cool bands that we sort of clicked up with, but yeah, it wasn't, I don't know. Yeah, it seemed like the cool thing that united the cool bands on that year's Warped Tour was that we weren't a part of one of those other groups,
shit bands.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's like a huge pleasure to bump into any of the guys from Bayside because fuck the Black Veil Brides. That's why, you know, we're two of the cool ones. Look at all those fucking dorks out there. Yeah.
Dude, when you said Gallows, I was like, hell yeah! I loved that first CD. I feel like that would have been a group of guys that you would have been hanging out with.
Seeing the Gallows play Warped Tour every day for, you know, however many weeks that was
oh God,
like, that's probably one of the best things that's happened to me in my life, because they were just so unbelievably savage. It was just this primal expression of fuck everything.
Uh-huh.
And I love how terrified it made the little, like, Skittlecore Pink Tutu kids, because it was like, oh, this is actually what hard looks like. Like,
Dude, I saw this singer get off stage and punch someone in the face in New York at a show. Like, I witnessed that happen. It was amazing.
With watching their set in Chicago at the Chicago Warped Tour date was one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely one of my top 5 concert experiences ever. They were just on fire, and the whole crowd was so fucking into it. There was this, they all get off the stage, or they're all in the crowd except the drummer. The crowd formed this huge circle pit that goes around the monitor desk way out there. That happened several times, but this one was really special. It was such a huge, wild circle pit, kicking up dust, and it's like, it was like a shitty kung fu movie. People would just break out of the circle, sprint across the big open O in the middle, and run at one of the band members. And they just took turns, like jumping up 8 feet in the air and planting both of their feet on the chest of whoever was running at them and just knocking them all the way back into the circle. And then they could just get back on their feet and start running around in the circle again. And it was just insanity. Everyone, all the crew members.
Yeah, it was like you were watching fucking Constantinople get sacked.
Yeah. And these crew guys, they've seen some shit. I mean, these are like, veteran, badass, tough guys, grew up seeing Black Flag in their heyday at the, in LA. And these guys are like wide-eyed, jaws on the floor, a little panicky about like, holy shit, how the fuck do we contain this? If this goes sideways, what the fuck do we do? It was wild. It was like truly wild. And I'm so glad that I was there to see it.
If you want to like point out, I mean, I don't know if we need me to point out the obvious, but it was like, I mean, it's obvious to me, but like the difference between what was happening, like with that Gallows set, or with, really all the Gallows sets, and with all the kind of like cool bands on that Warped Tour, all the bands that we sort of clicked up with, like what was happening with us versus what was happening, on the main stages with Escape the Fate and Devil Wears Prada and whatever, was that all that Escape the Fate, Devil Wears Prada, Black Veil stuff was such a tightly scripted show, all the way down to the audience participation, all the way down to this is what we're supposed to do when he does this. When the singer says this, we do this. When they jump up in the air, we do this. It was like all that whole scene had just become this very tightly scripted performance of a hardcore show. And Gallows is just an actual hardcore show, and at that point, the Architects were just a rock show. And that meant it could be, there was a fairly wide amount of things that could go on in an Architect set or a Gallows set or whatever. I mean, we were never, unfortunately, we were never as fun as the Gallows, I don't think.
The Gallows showed up. I mean, when you hear the record, you just know that they're going to bring that live, and it's just this raw, especially the guy having such a thick accent, and they're from like London or something like that, or just over in England, and you feel like they're coming from, like the coal mining towns or fucking in Britain, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna fuck with these guys.
No, they were like the hardest. Like that, when that band is on stage playing, they're the hardest human beings that have ever lived. Off stage, they're just nice guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the difference. Every band that was kind of set apart we were the bands that didn't have like a scripted performance, because it had just become that. That's sort of what had happened to the scene, was that it all just became scripted. There's no other way for me to say it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I'm even thinking of, and I actually do like Bring Me the Horizon, but like you could see if you look at any videos of them playing, there is that, here's when the breakdown happens, and then here's where he does the deep screamy voice part. It's like it's so like mathematical in where it happens, and it does feel like it is totally like you're watching a play, that you don't stray from those parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as going to an EDM festival. Like, there's no question when the drop is coming. Like, this is the big long build, and he's going to do it triple long because it feels like it's really, it's really going a long time now, isn't it? It's like, no, it's fucking not. It's in multiples of 4, man. Like, there's nothing confusing about this. EDM is another one that just became really scripted like that.
Well, and it being scripted, to me, like, it reminds me of all not just the performance of each song, but the banter in between the songs was scripted. You know what I mean? That's when it starts to settle in that, like, oh, this is some phony bullshit. Every day you get a, Pittsburgh, bring it so hard. Let's, you make Dubuque look like pussies. Just the same shit every stop. Like, oh God.
Who's that band? Not 4 Year Strong. I like them. Oh my God, a day to remember.
Day to Remember was on that tour, yeah.
Yeah, like I saw them play live once, and it was like a hard version of Newfound Glory, and I like Newfound Glory, but like it was like they took that sound and made it this hardcore thing. But the singer's always like, "What?" Like you're saying, Brandon's like, "What the fuck is up, New Jersey?" And like he says it so many times, you're like, "We fucking get it. You know where you are."
Yeah.
Is that you're working the crowd? Is that how you're doing it right now? No, like I would know shit about. Like I never played in front of that big of a crowd, but
Hey, if it's a turn off, you know what I mean? You got to trust your gut as an audience member too. If it feels like bullshit, it is.
Oh yeah, I feel like I'm getting like sold false goods. I'm like, oh, I know what this is. Don't bullshit me, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean it's literally like Prince walks out on stage at Kemper Arena and he's like, I told my tour manager that there was no way I was doing this tour unless we came back to Kansas City. And you're like, oh, the fuck you did. Come on.
That's so fucking true.
It's just low-hanging fruit, and that's fine. I mean, that's being a performer is hard, and so I'm not saying that nobody should reach for the low-hanging fruit. Sometimes when it's all low-hanging fruit, like when something is reduced to only shout-outs and mosh parts, then maybe it's a little too low.
Every band deserves a couple of cheap rounds of applause. Fine.
Yeah, but it's like consistent though. You can just know, like no one likes to feel that they're kind of being like pampered, not pampered, but just like spoken to as a young kid. It's like this should be an experience. Like we should be creating something new right now.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's that kind of thinking that'll make you not a part of the scene. That's the kind of thinking that we did.
That's the kind of thinking that'll let you in the Gadjits.
Keeps you from being accepted into any of these closely guarded cliques.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But if you did like your thing the whole time, even looking back, if you didn't get that bigger thing that maybe you thought you were looking for, I don't know, it's like kind of nice to look back and be like, I didn't stray from what I felt was what I needed to feel instead of.
I mean, that part I have zero regrets about. It's not like I can't look back and say I have some regrets, but none of them are about not doing what I wanted. And that part's really cool. We never, I don't have any regrets about phoning it in. We never phoned it in. I
had two questions I asked at the end, but before that I started asking, is there a story that you've always wanted to tell that you've never told before in another interview that you'd like to tell right now?
Oh man.
Well,
story that we've never told before
in an interview.
That we'd like to tell right now.
Fuck it. Yeah, fuck it. Let's go for it.
Go for it.
What fucking year was it? 2000? I think it was the year 2000. We did a show. No, it starts back in 1999. We did a couple shows in Ohio, opening up for the Boss Tones at a couple of colleges. We hit it off with the Boss Tones. I asked them at the end of the night, "Hey guys, we want to do more shows with you. This kicked ass. Let's do this some more. What, you got anything else coming up that we can squeeze our way onto?" They said, "Yeah, we got a handful of shows coming up in a few months. These are all dates that they're like flying to, so we should probably just pick one or two, and we'll do those couple." I said, "Yeah, show me the dates." So it's San Francisco, LA, Denver, New York City, Miami. I said, "We want them all." They said, "Well, guys, come on. Like, there's almost no possible way you can make all of those gigs because it takes so long to drive from each city." And I said, "Well, let's look at the fucking." There was an atlas out, so I literally just like did shitty rough mileage calculations using my thumb on a trucker's atlas. It was like, "No, we can make this work. There's just enough time to make this work." And they were like, "All right, but if you guys don't make it to one of these gigs, we're going to be fucking pissed. We're never going to forgive you. Otherwise, somebody else could have been booked on that show, right? So you can't say you're going to take them and then not show. So yeah, it's a deal, I promise. And then I had to go deliver the news to the band, to the rest of the guys. Like, hey, got us some dates at the Bosstones. We're going to have to basically drive for like a week and a half solid, stopping to perform, stopping for a couple of hours to perform at each show. We did it. It was the stupidest tour outing ever, right? But we did it. And all the shows were fine. We were a little delirious at the last couple, but we were, they went off. And then the Bosstones gave us a tour with them all across Canada. The Bosstones were fucking huge at the time, right? The Knock on Wood had come out like a year prior, and they were still just riding high. Most of this tour of Canada are these festivals with they're the Molson festivals, like around 10,000 people each, right? These big deals. They were headlining. We got to open up for them on all these shows. It was awesome. And there was one day off booked on the tour in between Saskatoon and Vancouver. And then like a few days before this day off, they decided, hey, we're filling in this day off with a little club show. Okay, yeah, what's the scoop? So we show up to this little club. We're playing for like 10,000 people every day, right? And now we're playing a club that holds about 500 people, which is way cool, right? To be like one of to be at a show in a small club with a band who's playing huge festivals, right? Like that should be really cool for the audience.
Yeah.
Who gets in, right? Except it wasn't, because this little club that should fit 500 people, they sold like 1,200 tickets to the show. So now it's way too crowded. I love when things are like kind of dangerously crowded and you fucking shoehorn people in there. That can feel so cool. That's like that classic illegal old school punk rock club shit. And I love it. But this went from way cool to like way uncool very quickly. Bosstones had just started their set, and this girl gets lifted up on top of the crowd to crowd surf. This kid in the front row turns around and he just grabs this girl's breasts. He just reaches up and honks them, being an opportunistic little prick. Dickie waves his arm and makes the band stop playing mid-song. They're like two, 3 songs into the set. Makes the band stop, and he admonishes this kid in front of everybody. He yells out for security to come take this kid and escort him out, and Dickie pulled his wallet out and threw $20 back in the kid's face, to give him his money back. Just get the fuck out of here. That behavior's not welcome here. Well, the security guards, they don't just grab him and walk him out the door. Instead, one security guard grabs him around the neck with both hands, like just choking the shit out of him. And the other security guard is just like rapid fire punching this kid's face like a speed bag at the gym. This all happens so fast. Everyone's just dumbstruck. The whole band has stopped. All eyes are on this front row center. And these guys are just kicking the shit out of this kid, right? So Dickie starts yelling immediately, like, stop hitting him. Don't fucking hit the kid. Stop. Just walk him out the door. Don't hit him. And they won't stop hitting him. This is ages ago, and we had finished our set, and I've been back there pounding all the Bosstones Rider beer, right? So I'm pretty good and loose. My inhibitions are gone. And this situation is just getting more and more tense by the second. And Dickie starts screaming for other security guards to come get these security guards and get them the fuck out too. And now there's all these other little groups of security guards coming around, and they're just grabbing people in the audience and beating the shit out of them. It's the same deal. One guy grabs somebody around the neck, and the other one starts using their head like a speed bag. It's like, oh my God, what the fuck is happening? So Dickie screamed into the microphone, his huge, deep Dickie Barrett scream, all right, I authorize every last one of you to tear this fucking place apart. And I took that shit to heart, and I ran and dove off the front of the stage into these guys who were beating up the first guy, the original kid who was getting beat up. I just dove at them like a fucking Hal Needham movie, and I like bowled them over and I separated them. And for like half a second, I thought, oh, this is fucking rad. All I have to do is cannonball over to these other 10 spots and break up each one of these fights, and then it's over. That thought was, like a millisecond in my head. And instead, what happened is I took this kid's place. So they fucking grabbed me around the throat and they start fucking punching me. So Zach.
And then Zach jumps in and smashes a Heineken over somebody's head.
Yep. And they let me go and they all jump on Zach. And Brandon fucking jumps in and they fucking start brutalizing Brandon.
I've never been choked out so many times in like the space of 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was
10 minutes.
Madness. It was complete madness. So
I was choked out like 4 times in 10 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah. So now I didn't realize what happened. I just knew that I jumped in. I knew what I did. I jumped in and then I took this kid's place. They were beating me up. All I know is they let go of me and they were all on this other guy who I didn't know at the time was my brother Zach, and then my brother Brandon too. So I'm just seeing stars, I just get on my feet and I'm dizzy and I know that I'm fucking bleeding and I'm a little freaked out, and I'm looking around the crowd and everyone is just beating the shit out of everyone. It's fucking wild. These security guards are on the stage beating up the Boss Tones. Everyone is getting beat up. I look over to the merch area. Our merch guy, the Boss Tones merch guy, they're both getting beat up. It's just fucking madness, right? So I'm scanning the crowd and I see the promoter out the back doors of the club. They've got these like round windows on these back doors to the club. And I see the promoter's face through one of those little windows. So I just fight my way through the crowd and I kick open these back doors. And I needed to tell the promoter, like, hey, man, really uncool situation is unfolding inside. I need you to call these security guys off. You need to do it now because everything's gone crazy and you're supposed to be in charge of these guys. So you're the one who might be able to end this. Right now, that's how I sort of intended it to come out. But
yeah, what'd you actually do?
Well, I'm trying to get that idea across, but I realized that I am like spitting. I'm shouting at the top of my lungs with my finger in his face, and he's like a good foot taller than me. I'm shouting at him, and like spittle and blood are like coming out of my mouth onto him and his shirt while I've got my finger in his face, shouting. And this guy looks down at me, and this was like a bad 80s movie or something, right? He took a big step back. He looked to his left and he looked to his right. So my eyes followed his direction. So I looked to his left and I looked to his right, and I see he's surrounded by like 30 more of these guys. These security guys, they're all dressed the same. And he's got like 30 of them surrounding him. And he just took a big step back. He looked left, he looked right, and he snapped his finger like a fucking 80s movie villain or something. And one of these fucking guys grabs me by my dick and my throat, lifts me over his head, throws me across the parking lot. And I hit the fucking Boss Tones. They have like a big rider truck that carry a bunch of gear and merch and shit. So I hit the rider truck and fall down, and I'm like, oh God, what the fuck? Oh shit, he's coming back. Oh shit. Grabs me by my dick and my throat again, picks me up, walks me over to these dumpsters, like the flat top, big industrial dumpsters. He fucking slams me down on top of one and just starts like, I don't know how else to describe it, but like King Kong punching me. just beating the fucking tar out of me, and I'm just seeing blood and spittle, and this guy is just fucking wailing on me, but I'm in shock, right? So like it doesn't hurt yet, but I know this is really bad. And he picks me up again and he throws me over against their bus, and then they all just jump on. They have like 100 fucking motorcycles lined up in the alley of this place. And they all just start jumping on their bikes and taking off. And then I see all the Boss Tones and their crew and all of my guys, they're all like rushing equipment out of the club and into trailers, and everybody's got like bloody noses and split lips, and everybody's totally disheveled. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like super out of it. And then Joe Gittleman scoops me up like a little baby. He just picks me up off the ground and walks me to their bus.
That was me.
All the Boss Tones and their crew and all of my guys, all the Gadjits were all on the Boss Tones bus. And as soon as the door shuts behind me, a fucking glass from the bar explodes on the side of the bus. And there's all these fucking people surrounding the bus, like screaming and shouting and throwing shit at the bus. They're all super pissed that their show just, died the way it did. And I'm trying to ask people like, hey man, you all right? You look like shit. And they're like, dude, you got to look at yourself. What the fuck? I went and looked at myself, and my top lip was like hanging off of my face like a fucking turkey gobble or some shit. And I see like my whole jaw. It was fucking wild. I went to the ER and got a ridiculous amount of stitches to put my lip back on my face. We had one day off, and then the next day we're playing in Vancouver or we're in Seattle or some shit. I don't know. Maybe we didn't even have a day off. The tour like went right along. We had a bunch more dates to play, and we're just showing up to every club with like choke marks on our necks and black eyes and split lips. And it was kind of fucking hilarious. I mean, it was really scary and shitty in the moment, but I sort of love that happened too.
I was not expecting that to be the story. When you're like, let's do this, I was like, I can't wait to hear what comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, we have some other good stories. There's always more stories.
Some of them are better in brief than like the actual story of the time we had a crystal cheeseburger eating contest followed by a phosphosodium laxative drinking contest. Wasn't like there it is. You got the best of the story. We had those competitions on tour.
Was that between you and another band, or just between your band and itself?
That was between me and my guitar tech, Jim.
What brought that on? Was that a constant thing that always happened?
Well, okay, so I have Crohn's disease. Like I have really severe Crohn's disease. So from time to time, because I have to go in for different kinds of procedures and stuff, I would have to do these like super powerful phosphosodium laxatives before you go in for a procedure, right? Like before they will scope you, you have to like be completely washed out, right? So you use this really powerful laxative drink, and it comes in this concentrated little bottle, and it's like 75 cents, or at least it was at the time. And I was telling Jim about that while we were in the van somewhere, and he was like, wait, you can just like get that? I was like, yeah, dude, it's just a laxative. It's just over the counter. And he was like, can we get some? And I was like, okay. And we went to Walmart and bought phosphosodium laxative. And then we followed up our Crystal Burger eating competition with a, okay, let's drink this shit. And you're about to ride the lightning, dude.
I mean, that stuff, I had to get a colonoscopy a couple years ago. So they gave me 2 drinks, like one the night before, one the morning of. I mean, you're basically shitting for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah.
But were you doing a big drive after, or was this at the end of the night?
This was on a day off in a hotel room in Ohio somewhere.
No, but it wasn't in Ohio. It was down south because it was Crystal Burger. It was in the southeast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was in the southeast then. Yeah,
what is Crystal Burger? I have no idea what this is.
So it's like the White Castle, but in the southeast.
Oh, okay.
The same as White Castle in every meaningful way.
I mean, that just burger on its own can clean you out. So I can imagine just the jet fuel you put on the fire.
Yeah, and on that particular tour, this was not the only like isolated incident that's really gross and that happened. There was also a competition where everybody refused to shower, and it became a competition, like how long can each person go without showering, who's going to be the last man standing, the filthiest person around. Oh God, it was painful. It was absolutely painful to live with.
Who won that one? Or who won? I don't know who would win the most, I guess, out of these competitions, like the shower
I don't
one.
know that one actually wins these competitions.
That's very true.
There really isn't a winner. I think I lost the least because I did not participate, but I still had to live with all of that. It was pretty
So gross. It's so fucking gross.
Yeah.
These are the things that happen when you're just desperate to pass time in a van, and you know that you've got months. It's like months of this kind of endless grind of load in, load out. Some shows are good, most of them are not. Like that grind turns you into a bit of a caveman.
You guys typically had a female in the band the majority of the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times.
Females are a lot cleaner than guys, so were they grossed out, or are they like, oh, we're gonna join in on the fun here?
No, they descended into the depths just as we did.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was some real 3 month shit. It was all or nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was all or nothing, and it was like it got very like it was really Paleolithic. Like I say caveman, and I don't say it lightly. Like we really did get onto some like caveman shit.
Did people ever point that out when you'd go to shows and they're like, Jesus Christ, you guys are rank?
Oh my God. Okay, so I think we might have spoken about the difference between California bands and everybody else at this particular time in the scene's history. I remember very distinctly that there were California bands who were just horrified by us because we weren't like clean cut Huntington Beach skater boys, and they're like, I don't know, they like think they're European or something, like they don't shower. I distinctly remember, like I distinctly remember having that beef with the band that we were on tour with, and thinking it was really funny because I remember they were all very concerned about getting pimples.
Can you say the band?
Yes, it was Homegrown.
Yeah, that tour, it was the Amazing Crowns, the Gadjits, and Homegrown, and yeah, that was such a weird run because those Homegrown guys were like, yeah, they were kind of prude.
They were super prude. Let's be honest. Okay, so they were super prude, and I feel like I can say this because I've done 3 recovery-based podcasts in the last 2 weeks, so I feel like I can say this, that in Detroit, I did heroin just to freak them out.
Oh my God. Wait, did you sniff it or did you shoot it?
I smoked it.
Wow.
But I did it just to scare the shit out of them because I thought they were being such prudes about basically everything. Because we were at the Rock and Roll Ramada at Bagley and Cass. These were like kind of the glory days of the Rock and Roll Ramada, if memory serves. And it was a scary, dark, dirty place to hang out. And it was a big, Detroit was a big, scary ass city right then. And it was fun. And that was part of what I liked about it. And it was part of the reason that we had like good shows there, I think, was that we just were like embracing the danger of it all. Yeah. And then these prudes came through with us and were like, ew, everything's gross. Ew, people do drugs. Ew, our clothes aren't clean. Ew, a pimple. And it was just like, oh, fucking grow up, you child.
So I got 2 questions out of that. Before I ask the bigger question. The Homegrown, I thought in their CDs they portrayed this image that they were kind of like that Blink-182 band that was into the poop and fart jokes and like were gross.
Totally.
So they were bullshitting.
Oh no. I think that they were like, they would think that poop and fart jokes were super funny.
But they didn't want to be around poops and farts.
But they were definitely they were definitely prudes.
So my second question is based on what you just said about heroin and recovery thing. It sounds like you're open. I didn't know this at all. Was that a big thing in the band? Like, was that a problem?
Heroin didn't become a problem in the Gadjits. Pills and booze were a big problem in the Gadjits, for sure.
I just felt there was an open door there to ask that question. So
Yeah, fair enough.
okay, if you don't want to talk about it, definitely let me know. I just figured like I was like, I'll see if you want to talk about that.
I don't want to blow anybody else's spot up necessarily, but it's like zero secret that alcohol was a big problem for the Gadjits, and that ran right through the Architects. And then pills were like, it's amazing that I didn't kill the entire band with pills in the Gadgits, and then in the Architects, different thing. I'll own my own, my own coke problem from the tail end of the of the Architects. Like, yeah, pills and cocaine, that was a big deal for me. I did that. I did a lot of that. It was a big problem. But it wasn't actually like a band problem, really, because like I was never the like party on tour guy. The fact that I did heroin in Detroit sticks out in my head because like I actually got fucked up on tour. And that was something I never ever did because it was like I had to be the responsible one. So I was like herding derelicts around on tour, and then we would come home and when I was at home, then I would get myself fucked up.
Adam, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, I think that the way Brandon put all that was very accurate. I never personally had much of an issue with any of that shit, but I was like just bizarrely naive to all of that shit actually going on. I sort of was in the dark about most of that. So it's weird. Most of what I know about, the real wild shit, I learned from hearing stories about it way after the fact. I had no idea some of that shit was going on when it was going on. Because, yeah, my focus was always on, like, trying to be on point for the show. I ended up being filling the tour manager role through most of those years. So I was always like, I was trying to hang out and have fun after the shows, but it involved a bunch of booze sometimes and smoking pot sometimes, but not really much else. And I was just sort of oblivious to it. As I guess I don't know if I was just in the other room doing shit or if I was daydreaming or what, but I didn't really know about a bunch of that shit until after the fact.
So I'm pretty much like you. I'm so oblivious to any of that stuff, but I remember hearing that at the drive-in, I think it was just Cedric and Omar, they were huge coke heads. And I don't know if that was in that band or that was in Mars Volta, because my buddy, he worked with them, and he would tell stories about how they would try to smuggle it on airports and airplanes and shit like that. And then we were on tour with the band. I don't want to say who they were, and one of the guys he was talking about coke and stuff, and I'm like, that's just so out of my realm of knowing about that shit. I'm like, I drink a lot of beer, but anything that was around me, I would just like you. I would just be like, well, I don't, what's going on? I don't even know what's happening.
Yeah, it's a weird deal, and it sounds like bullshit to hear myself saying that out loud. It sounds like I'm like lying to cover something up or something, but it's like that's just the way it was. I was trying to have fun and shit, but it just wasn't even on my radar, save for a couple of incidents. But
so on that note, to shift gears so we don't have to stay there, did you guys, because I feel like what's the last time we spoke? 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks? 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Because when we ended, we did the Boss Tone story, and you said you thought of other stuff. Did you guys bring anything where you're like, I have to tell this? This has to be something we tell the story of.
The crappy part of all my stories is that I was so sober on tour for so long that most of my stories involve like throwing somebody else under the bus, because I was just sort of the observer and the scribe for all of this depravity for the most part. So I don't know if I want to like throw, Jim or Mike or anybody else under the bus for like shit they may have done in Canada. I feel like that's
in
their,
Canada. That one
tell those stories,
Yeah,
It's very noble of you.
Canada was always a great spot for us, and
for you too. Every time we cross the border, man. Like,
oh my God, it was, we were just so much more popular up there than almost anywhere else at any other time. But yeah, so at one point we had an actual Canadian booking agent, and he just booked us in Canada. That's his only deal. And
Adam, you have to tell the short version of this story, okay?
All right. So he asks us, like, hey, so now I'm your Canadian booking agent. What do you want me to book? And we said, well, we want to play everywhere. Like, we're going to do like 3 months just figurating around the lower 48. That's what they call them. That's what they call the states in Canada, the lower 48. So we're going to spend like 3 months jumping from one tour to another, doing all kinds of shit in the lower 48. And then we want you to take us across Canada to play everywhere. Now, we've been to Canada a bunch of times opening up for other bands. And every other time it's like 3 shows, 4 shows max, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and maybe an Edmonton or a Calgary or something. So we tell him we want to play everywhere, and he comes back to us with this tour booked. And this was like before smartphones and shit, before social media. So we're really not in contact with him much for a while. And then he sends us this tour routing that has us playing 32 shows in 30 days, going from Halifax, Nova Scotia, all the way to the little islands off of the West Coast, the Nanaimo Island. We're like, holy shit, dude. 3 months in the lower 40. We thought we were going to do like maybe 5 or 7 shows in Canada or something. And now we're doing 32 in 30 days. And then we're going to go to Alaska after the Canadian run is over before we drive home. So we went fucking everywhere in Canada. And it was totally wild. I mean, one night we're playing like a big, beautiful club that fits like 1,000 people or 1,200 people. And the next night we're playing a tiny little VFW hall, with a PA on a stick. And then the next night we're playing in a restaurant. And then the next night we're playing a big established club again. And then the next night we're playing some other weird VFW hall kind of show. It was wild. We did 4 shows in Toronto in 2 days.
Okay, but get to the part with the college.
Okay, all right.
So going towards, right?
Yeah. So we're playing everywhere, and we get to this little college town that's like in the middle of fucking nowhere. We're in the Great Plains of Canada, where there's just a seemingly never-ending stretch from city to city, and we're just stuck out in the middle of nowhere in this field at this college. We get there, we park, we start to load in, and there's this like college, this university employee that comes right over and grabs Mark, who was our Canadian booking agent, who was also like doing the tour with us to help tour manage and shit. So he grabs Mark and he's like, hey, what are you doing in here? You're not allowed to be here. Piques my interest. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Mark's like, oh shit, I got to explain this. Okay, so for one reason or another, some past show went sideways and now Mark is banned from the university. But he's with us and he's supposed to like sell the merch and be there to settle up the gig at the end of the night and everything. So they say that Mark has to sit in the hallway outside of the venue all night. He cannot enter the venue. And we try to push back a little bit. They're not having it. Okay, whatever. Let's just do this show and get on to the next one.
Let's pause here to interject that the one thing that we told our brand new Canadian booking agent before this tour, before we did anything with them, because they were like, I want to come along, I want to tour manage, what do you guys want, what do you need? And the one rule that we laid down was like, always get our money.
Because otherwise I handle the tour manager shit, and then if stuff gets funny with the money at the end of the night, I'm in a weird position most of the time where like I have to be good cop and bad cop with these promoters if they're trying to get funny with the money. You know what I mean? Like I have to get our fucking money, but I also need to
be a nice guy.
Yeah, be a nice guy and have a good relationship so that we can return.
Okay,
So
so
yeah, if Mark's going to take over, you like just get our fucking money. Let us be, nice and make good relationships everywhere. And if anything ever has to get weird, you're the one who gets weird. So he says, okay, yeah, cool. So here we are back at this venue, and we're, we play our show. We just hit the last notes of the last song, and they're ringing out, and we're just about to start. We start to climb off stage, and that same guy, the university employee who had like barred Mark from entering the building, comes over and he says, "Where's Mark?" I don't know. He was supposed to be in that hallway outside the doors with you and the girl who was taking tickets and money at the door. He's, no bullshit. Where is he? Where is he? And he's getting real tough. And we're like, well, fuck you. I don't know. So the guy, like, he marches out to our van and he looks in the van and he's super pissed off. And we've cased up all of our equipment. We're loading our shit out and we're all wondering, where the fuck is Mark? So I'm like, well, all right, I guess I got to settle up the show because Mark's not here to do it. And I go grab this guy and I'm like, hey man, it's time to pay us. It says here in my contract, you owe us X, And he says, no, fuck that. Where's Mark? Mark took all of the money. And I'm like, whoa, what? He wasn't even allowed in the building. So apparently what had happened, Mark had a gut feeling that these guys were going to get funny with the money. So at some point, the girl who was watching the door and taking the money, she had to use the restroom. So she and Mark were getting friendly with each other, sitting out there together. So she asked Mark, hey, would you just watch the door for a second while I go use the restroom? He says, sure. She comes back from the restroom. Mark is gone. And the cash box with the ticket stubs and the money and everything is fucking gone. So they're rightfully furious. And there's no money. There's no accounting for any of these tickets sold. So we kind of wait around for a long time trying to wait for Mark to show up, and he's just fucking not. So we're like, well, we're in the middle of 32 shows in 30 days. We have like a 9-hour drive to get to the next spot. We got to leave this university. So, and Mark's nowhere to be found. We cannot reach him. So we just start driving away from the gig. And we're driving down this big long road out in the middle of nowhere. And this car just zooms up right next to us. And it's this older woman driving the car. And this is a little 2-lane road, right? But she's up next to us. Like if there was any oncoming traffic, she would be driving right into it. So we noticed this. We're like, what the fuck? And she's waving her arm and she's motioning for us to roll down the window. We're like, fuck, okay. So roll down the window. And she yells out, I'm Mark's mom. Follow me. What? What the fuck is this? So what else are we going to do? We follow this woman who says she's Mark's mom. And this is Canada. So, of course, the first thing we come to is a Tim Hortons. So we pull over. She pulls over into this Tim Hortons and we pull over behind her. And we go inside. And there's Mark sitting inside the Tim Hortons with the cash box. Just so happens that was the town his mom lived in. So he was able to, like, when he stole the cash box and ran down the road to Tim Hortons, he was able to call his mom for backup.
Wait, did he plan that? Did he know? I don't know. Was that just instinct in the moment?
He didn't tell any of us what was happening.
No, I think it was instinct in the moment, right? Because we get there, he's there, and we say, Mark, what the fuck? And he said, guys, you told me no matter what to make sure that I get your money. And I just knew that they were going to get weird with the money. So this was, the best plan of attack and all. And we're like, dude, this is fucking bonkers, Mark. Holy shit. As it happens, the amount that was in the cash box was only like $30 more than what the venue actually owed us. So chances are they probably would have tried to get funny with the money, but just absolutely stunning chain of events.
Well, let me ask you this, and I must start wrapping this up. So was it, you don't have to say the number, but was it a substantial amount of money that made, okay. I was going to say.
It wasn't worth like going to jail for. No.
No. It was like under $1,000.
That's I mean, when you're on tour back then, that's a good amount of money. I mean, I'm thinking if it was, I mean, we had a per diem, sometimes it was like $50 or $100. So I'm just imagining someone going through all this trouble when your guarantee is like $100 and you get like $130 out of it because he steals it and runs with it.
I mean, it was.
So moral of the story is Mark's the fucking man, and he stayed true to his word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. That's one way to look at it.
I love how you guys preface that story with, we had one rule, and then it just wraps around where he said, you guys had this one rule, so I had to take extreme measures to make this happen.
Yeah, it's like, Mark, obviously we want to get paid every night, and there's a lot of like shitty dickhead promoters who will try to short you, and sometimes you got to argue with them and stuff, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine he would take that to mean steal the fucking cash box and run away to the next Tim Hortons down the road.
I mean, just remembering people from back then, there's some fucking characters that were out there that you would run into. I mean, all this. I mean, you're like, who? And some of them were just super whacked out, and you're like, okay, this is the last time I want to see you. And then some of them are just really genuine people, and you still kind of touch base with them to this day. But they were just wild people. You're like, how? Okay, you're just there's a different makeup in you.
Yeah, he was a rare breed.
Okay, so this is completely has nothing to do with any of this, but I remembered it, and it's nothing like big or anything. But I remembered, I was trying to, after the conversation that we had, I was like, oh my God, I remember the shows we played with you guys, and we talked about the Atari's show, but do you remember when we played with you guys in San Diego at that, like, it was almost like a library kind of at a college?
The outdoor show?
No, it was inside, but it was like this big space. It was almost like a student center.
Oh, yes. I do remember that.
Yeah,
the Wonder Years were on that. The good Wonder Years were on that.
Yeah, we were on tour with them in Lawrence Arms. I think that was the last time we ran into you guys as a band. I think it was at that show.
Yeah, God, and I remember some bits about that night because the Wonder Years had that drummer that was just
Caitlin.
Outstanding. Yeah, she was just a machine, and it was inspiring as hell to watch her play. So I loved bumping into them on the road, and I remember bumping into you guys there. It had been a little while.
Yeah, this is when you guys were in your like black hair, all black dress get up phase.
Yeah, that was when Homegrown called us European.
That's what you guys looked like, the Refused.
Yeah, because I guess we looked really European then.
Wait, was that tour? Were you guys about to join them? Was that the same time? This is like 2002. This is September 2000, I think.
Yeah, it would have been right around that time.
Yeah, it was awfully close if it wasn't on that same run. Because we used to just hop around a lot. It's not like we would try to set it up so that we're doing, we're going to go do 2 weeks with the Stereo over here, and then we're going to join up with the Ghost and the Wonder Years for 3 weeks over there, and then we do a few headline shows over to meet up with the Amazing Crowns and Homegrown, and we're doing that for a month, and then we were trying to stay gone all the time if we could.
99, 2000, that was the Muffs, that was Mr. T Experience, that was
oh my God,
Amazing Crowns and Homegrown, that was My Superhero and Edna's Goldfish.
Yep.
And RX Bandits.
And then the RX Bandits, Edna's Goldfish run, and then there was a lot. I mean, shit, those were big years for us.
Did you say in the previous time we spoke that you guys played with Catch 22?
I don't know if we talked about that. I feel like we played with them once or twice, but we never did like a real tour with them. And I know they were on some of the. So for years and years, we would do at least one or two Warped Tour shows, and they were on some of those.
I think Catch-22 was one of those bands like Zebrahead that was like on that was supposed to be on part of a run with us and then didn't do it for some reason.
And we toured with Real Big Fish a couple of times, and then I hung out with the Catch-22 guys when they were touring with Real Big Fish. When they came through town, I went out to hang out and hung out with them that night. And I knew that I knew those guys, but I don't remember. It certainly wasn't like a memorable show or two that we played with them, but I have a suspicion that we did play with them a couple of times. Yeah, well, and some guys that we toured with when they were in other bands ended up joining Catch-22.
Yeah, they were almost kind of like the ensign of ska.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so many members. So it's two questions, and then in the middle of them, I'm going to ask Brandon something. But before I ask the last question, what would you guys like to plug? It could be about you. It could be about someone you know doing something cool. It could be about both.
I would plug that our new Other Americans record comes out next month on the 10th, and that my new Men's of Death Squad thing will come out. I don't know when. Probably something like December. I'll have a new thing for that. I would plug those. I would say if you can hear Adam play really well, you should check out the Hip Shot Killer record that is the most recent one, because Adam played his ass off all over that.
Yeah, that's Mike Alexander, who was a member of the Gadjits for a very, very long time and a member of the Architects for a very long time. He's got this band, Hip Shot Killer, and during the pandemic, their drummer had to like have some major surgery. So he was out of commission for a little while, and the other guys were super hot to record. I jumped in the studio with them and we made a punk rock record. That was super fun. Yeah. That's just like digital release only.
Is that Guns and Gas?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on Spotify right now. Let's check that out. I'll check all this out. This is great. Actually, and Brandon, did you want to give a shout out to or say what that episode is that you just did? Just give a plug to those two podcast episodes you just did.
Okay, so one of them is the Convalescent Flaneur, and I think it comes out tonight. And then the other one, it's the Book of Very Bad Things, or the Book of Very, Very Bad Things.
Okay, that's the podcast?
Yeah.
Do they focus on recovery or?
Yeah. It and Convalescent Flaneur are both recovery-focused podcasts. I'm not like an expert, but, I did clean up, so,
You just gave your personal experience, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to, it's fun to be able to talk about that stuff and know that you're addressing an audience of initiates.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. Cool. All right. So last question. You both can answer it separately. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Scene ethics.
Don't play the little show like a disappointed diva. Play the little show as hard as you play the Hollywood Bowl.
Yes.
To this day, I will still play to I will play to one bartender as hard as I play to the Hollywood Bowl.
Yes, that's a very good one. Yeah, I guess.
Don't rip people off. It seems really quaint to me that I've lived through the era of the Fugazi $5 show, and that now nobody bats an eye at a $10 ticket, and they don't really start batting eyes until we get up to about $25, and then people are like, "Oh man, 25." But I also personally have spent $300 on Rage Against the Machine tickets.
Same.
Yeah. So
yeah.
The idea that I came from this place where it was like you're a giant corporate sellout if you charge more than $5 for your show, and then I'm also willing to pay $300 to see Rage Against the Machine of all fucking bands, right? I think that's kind of funny and ironic, but it's also don't rip people off. Whatever people are paying, take it seriously. Take seriously that people just paid their money to see you, and don't be a $45 t-shirt asshole.
the scene ethics that I really hold on to, it's more like the sort of spirit of all the weirdo bands of all the scenes. It's just like, do what you want, play the shit you want to play. Don't be beholden to the scene, and try to get style points for, complying with every trend and fad and every little facet of the scene. It's make the art that actually you feel like making, no matter what the consequence. Go ahead and make the weird record. Go ahead and play the weird part. It might be understood and appreciated. It might not. You gotta go with what actually moves you, and not what's determined by other people to be the hot trend of the moment.
I would add the scene ethic that I really hold very dear is like, do things with your friends. You don't have to like move to Hollywood, to direct a movie. You can make a movie with your friends and be John Waters. When you start a band with your friends, you're saying, I'm not, I already know I'm not in U2. I'm in this band with my friends. Those are always like my favorite movie makers. My favorite director of all time is John Waters, because he's doing with movies what I would do with punk rock. I'm going to make with my friends what studios aren't making for me. I'm going to make my movie. I'm going to, make my record with my friends. I think that gets really lost in the era of, algorithmically driven culture.